everyone, welcome back to Her Happy Mind Yaps, where I'm using my master's in positive psychology to teach you that happiness is actually a skill, it's not luck. And on today's episode, I have a guest speaker. Her name is Karli. She's a mom of three, she's an engineer, she's a speaker, she's a coach, she's an author. And today she's going to be talking about her Thrive framework and how it will help you go from surviving to thriving in your workplace, in your relationships, in your thoughts, in your intuitions, your values, and in your environment. In positive psychology, when I was doing my master's, we learned about all different kinds of frameworks: the Broaden-and-Build, the via character strengths, the mindfulness, resilience theory, PERMA, self-determination model, all these different things. And so I'm really excited to talk to Karli because her framework is absolutely amazing. And it's really for any of you, any parts of your life. So let's welcome her on Her Happy Mind, and I will be asking her all the right questions. Welcome, Karli, to Her Happy Mind. It's so nice to connect with you. And when we were planning this interview and was in the process of finalizing, it really brought me back to my studies and visiting different frameworks or like frameworks again. So like the PERMA model or the via character strengths or the Broaden and Build and the mindfulness. There's so many different frameworks and theories out there in positive psychology. And so when I heard that you're like, I have my own, Thrive framework, I was like, ooh, I have so many questions to ask you because that's what I want this channel to be about, is going above and beyond just the surface level well-being and focusing more on sustainable resilience and strength and purpose. So not just coping, but truly flourishing and thriving. So I was like, Karli, I have to invite you. So thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. When I found your channel and your Instagram page, I'm like, this is the best, like any way to get this information out to as many people as possible. So yeah, when I saw that and connected with you, I'm like, this is exactly what we should be doing. I love it.
Yes, exactly. It's like meeting these people that we have never would have met if it wasn't for social media. So I'm always
Yes,
grateful for social media. It does bring some good in our life. So
exactly.
I do want to start off so our viewers kind of know who you are. I know that you started and still are working in the STEM field, but how did you
Yeah.
go from like that career, but then also like, let me dip my toes into positive psychology?
Absolutely. So let's see. Yeah, I've worked in the engineering field for over a decade, and I got an undergrad in engineering management, a master's in systems engineering. And as I was kind of working my way up in the corporate world, kind of the next step that everybody does is they go and get an MBA, so a master's in business association. And that was the track I was on. I'm like on this track to go to director executive. And my company actually offered coaching for managers. And not a lot of people were taking up the opportunity. Originally, they only offered it to executives. So as a senior manager, they were like, hey, nobody's using these coaching, opportunities. Would you be interested? And I like jumped on the opportunity. So, in one of those first conversations, I'll never forget, I was talking to my coach and she's like, tell me about your career, what's going on? And yeah, I was like, I'm getting ready to sign up for this MBA and I'm really not looking forward to it. I have two young kids at home and yeah, I'm not excited, but that's just kind of like what I have to do. And I so appreciate that coach because that one conversation just changed the path of my career, right? Um, yeah, so the question she asked me then is like, it feels like this is a full body no for you, right? Like nothing in you wants to do it. What would you be super excited to study? And I was just kind of like, I don't really know. Honestly, haven't really looked into it other than like this is just what we do when we become program manager and kind of work our way up. So took a step back and kind of looked around at like what are jobs that I see people do that I absolutely love. Um, in a weird kind of way, my husband was also going through a career change, and the CEO of his company had told him like, hey, you should consider consulting a career coach. And so we both kind of were on that journey at the same time. And he had a really wonderful coach. And like the way she was able to change the way he was thinking about things and the way he kind of approached things differently, I was so fascinated with, right? Um, yeah, I played college sports, so like the coaching mindset, it's always been drilled in, like how do people can be coachable and how to change and how to improve and how to like make a team jive. So I saw that and was like, that would be really cool. I have no idea how I could fit that into like the engineering world, but I'm interested. So started just doing some searches and then I don't know how it was for you, but like as soon as I saw positive psychology, it was like a yes, 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 yes. Like I want to go to that class just because I want to go. Like um you wouldn't even have to like I might even pay to go for this class if they don't allow me to go. It just was so fascinating. So, yeah, I submitted a request, like, within, I would say 2 months of that conversation, submitted a approval request up through my leadership. It was odd, right? But that I would want to go get the psychology degree, but I was able to kind of form it in like, oh, this will help the organization in X, Y, and Z way. And immediately, like within 30 seconds, they had approved it in the system. And I just like couldn't believe it, right? Like even putting the application in to like submit the request, I was like, oh, I can't do this because they're gonna think X, Y, and Z. And I kind of had to be coached through that, right? And people are like, well, just put it in and see what happens. And yeah, doing it and then actually getting to go to class and like getting to learn, that was the first realization for me, the power of coaching and the power of understanding our thoughts and our mind.
Mm, I love that story. And yeah, it's a funny story too, because when you said, I don't know what your story is when you saw the positive psychology, uh, my program, it was literally, I signed up too. And then I realized that since it was at the University of Melbourne, that my classes were going to be from 2:30 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. So
Oh my gosh.
and I just remember talking to my mom and dad. They're like, "You're gonna do that. You're gonna work, and then you're gonna wake up in the middle of the night and do it." And I was like, "Yeah, like that's how much I'm so pumped about this course. It doesn't matter what time of the day." And I'll be there at like 2:30 in the morning, just opening my eyes, like, what is life? But when the professor started talking, I was like, "Yeah, I felt like I already got 10 hours of sleep." So I definitely connect to that as well. And a curious question,
Mhm.
Karli, what sports were you? I'm such a huge sports person as well. Like,
Yeah,
what sport
I
was your sport?
I played basketball. So, yeah, lots of fun with that. And I think I had heard through a couple of your YouTube videos too that, you have a background in sports. And I think a lot of that like coaching and learning mindset, right? The book Grit by Angela Duckworth, a lot of that I just really resonated with. And I'm like, man, this is so good. And it's so tactical, not only in sports, but in life and, in the corporate career. So
Mhm.
really excited about that. And yeah, I mean, 2 a.m. But it shows you, right? Like when you get aligned with something that you really love, just the power that that can bring.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you were saying too how you were kind of like looking around of like what other people are doing and how they're the jobs that they love. So how did you get into towards like thriving specifically? Because there's so many different avenues you could have took. So why thriving? What brought you to that?
Yeah, so it's actually really strange. So while I was in my master's, and I would love to talk to you about this too, we had to do a capstone project, and the capstone project had to be something that helped either an individual or a group of people. And at the time, right, I'm like newer into motherhood. I had my heart on like, how do I help moms? But again, I was in the situation where like my company is supporting me going through this. So I just, my mind kept going back and forth like, well, do I do a more corporate thing or do I do this mom thing? But my heart just like kept coming back to it. I had a really lovely professor that was like, put everything aside. Like put all of those things aside. What would you do if you could? And I was like, man, when I was prepping for childbirth, I got really into like hypnobirthing and all of these things that people would consider, like woo-woo. And as an engineer, I want to know the science behind it. Like, why does this stuff work? What is it about meditating? What is it about visualization? Like, why is this working? And so I was like, what I would love to do is to create some type of like childbirth program that combines like the hypnobirthing, but puts science and data behind it. And so, I was like, I want to do that, but I don't know how to share that with the corporate world. And whatever I did, I wanted to make sure I could bring them into it. And my professor was just hilarious because he was like, "Oh, that's crazy. Does your company have no pregnant women?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, there's pregnant women all the time, but like as an engineering leader, I would feel so uncomfortable like sharing that." And he was like, maybe that's the exact information that engineering minds need, or, like more logical, like math brain people need. And so, yeah, with that, I just went into it. And so as I started to outline the course, again, in the middle of the night or as I'm dropping my kids off, I would think through this, these are the things that are really important. And I wanted to have all these different sections. And then as an engineer, right, we love acronyms. I started to think about, well, like, is this PERMA? Is this like what acronym does this align with? And like strangely enough, like as I went through, it was the thoughts, the habits, the relationships. And as I started to kind of see it, I'm like, this is a Thrive framework. And originally I thought it was only applicable to birth. I mean, that's kind of how I formed it. So made these sections. So it's thoughts, habits, relationships, instincts, values, and environments. And I applied it to birth. I did the birth course, had a wonderful participation. Was so cool to see because people internationally were taking this from my company. So a woman in Poland, a lady in Philly, and just to hear their birth stories, it was like, this is the coolest thing I could ever imagine. Um, yeah, and then to kind of like keep snowballing into that, afterwards, somebody had asked me about being a part of a project where we write a book about women in STEM, and I was feeling like one of the lowest times in my career. I was really like, I don't think you want me to write anything because I don't think I would have a whole lot of great things to say right now. And again, through a coaching conversation, was just like, I wonder if I could, use the Thrive framework, which was utilized to come over arguably like the hardest thing I've ever done to and apply it to my career and what that would look like. And so did it and was like, wow, this is a really powerful tool and just super excited to share it with as many people as possible, in hopes that they can, overcome some challenge of their own as well.
I even like wrote it on my paper. I was like, okay, thoughts, habits, relationship, instincts, like values in your environment. I was like, I have to remember that because yeah, it was great. So I want to ask you a question too, if you can answer it, because
Yeah.
what is the difference if people are like, well, what's the difference between happiness and thriving? Like, would you be able
Yeah.
to like kind of separate the two and kind of give people an idea of like, yeah, there is a difference and this is what it is?
Yeah, so the way I guess for a visual person, right? The thing that comes to mind with me, and I can use the example that we just went down of with my own self, right? Like not that I was in survival mode, but I was very much in like the ho hum, like I gotta just get through this day. I gotta drop the kids off. I gotta go to work. I gotta come home. We gotta do all the things, and I just gotta get through it. And that, yes, there were moments of happiness, and yes, like, we were still enjoying the time, but I was definitely not thriving. So there was like happiness, no thriving, right? Enter this like whole area where my mind, the only way I can explain it is like my mind suddenly became like this garden and things just started to bloom. And like I was being, fed by the sun and the water and all the things. And like you can see it in my excitement, you can see it in the way that I go about the day. So really like even as I talk with people at keynotes or as we have these conversations, it's really how do you get from just survival mode and feeling like I'm gonna push through this to I'm genuinely excited about the day. I can't wait to wake up at 2 a.m., right? To log into this class because I'm gonna be learning something that I love. And I think so many of us have these things. I think the thing that's wildly interesting is like we all kind of have something inside of our gut, right? You talk with anybody and they're like, oh, I have this passion to write, or oh, I have this passion to start this company or to support people in this way. And we don't always listen to it. So it's really like nurturing those things to help that come alive.
Mm, great. And can you break down each, the acronym of Thrive and kind of, yeah, bring it to simple terms if someone's like, okay, I love this. I like the idea. She just brought, thoughts, relationships, all of this. Can you just break down each one for the viewers, just in more simple terms so they can understand?
Yeah, of course. So the first one is thoughts. Um, I know that you've talked about this as well, but our, if you think about the cognitive behavioral theory, this to me, it was such a simple thing that I had not realized was taking so much control over my life. But cognitive behavioral theory tells us that our thoughts create our feelings create our actions, and our actions reinforce our thoughts. So if we use the example of, say, me being like, yes, I'm interested in positive psychology, but my company will never pay for that. Like, it just couldn't happen. My thoughts are, this would never happen, which leads me to feelings of, oh, I don't belong, and, um, frustration that I'm just going to have to go get this other degree that they want me to get, which leads me to actions of not applying and potentially going down the path that I think everybody else wants for me, which leads me more into this downward spiral of thoughts of, feeling bad and whatnot. Um, and this really unlocked something for me because I'm like, okay, our thoughts are popping up. So how do we kind of intercept this and what can we do? Well, what science tells us is that we have, 60,000 thoughts a day, but we can't control what pops up, right? So one of the best things I found was on John Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness, and it was that, mindfulness is paying attention on purpose, and at the end of it, he says non-judgmentally. And so for me, that was a key that unlocked something where you're like, okay, I noticed that thought that pops up. I notice this. As a mom, we get a million of these. I'm a bad mom. I'm doing the worst. Whatever it might be. You notice it, kind of like give yourself a hug. It's okay. Like I can't control that thought that comes up, and then releasing it, right? A lot of times you can ask, like, is this thought helpful? Is it trying to, keep me from something? But yeah, just even noticing the thought is the first step, and just making sure that you're aware of what's going on. And yeah, I think a lot of us just go through the day without taking the moment to say, okay, what am I thinking through?
Absolutely. And I think that we can all start thinking about our daily habits as well. And that was kind of the rabbit hole I was going down. How old was I? Like 20 years old when you had to kind of figure out what you were doing for university. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, I kind of like, kids. I was like a day camp counselor and, so I'm going to go into education and, I absolutely love it. And then there hits a threshold when now I've been a teacher for 7 years and you kind of just think like, you grow yourself so much, or you read these books, or you read these research articles, and you're like, there has to be, you have that feeling, like you said, in your gut of there has to be something more. And I know if I stay here for another 30 years, sure, the pension is great. Sure, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder, but mentally, will I be as happy as it looks like on paper? And I knew the answer was no. And I know a lot of people go through that. They're like, but the pay is good and the pension's good and the time off is good. Yes, but what are you silencing inside of you for those golden handcuffs, right? Like, what is something that you're saying no to because it looks good on paper? Or I know our society is run by money, so I know that's such a yeah, a chokehold on people. But yeah, you brought up something so important of, are you thriving? Are you just surviving? Are you just paying the bills? Are you hiding your true self? And so a lot of the times, and you probably got that too, like, oh my God, you're so lucky you have the energy to go back to school. Or you're so lucky that, you do this and that, and you're a speaker and you're an author and all these things, but it's not that it's luck. It's really skill and taking the chance on you and seeing, okay, where is that gut feeling taking me? Or where are my thoughts taking me? And if they're constantly negative, okay, maybe I need to start changing what I'm doing on the outside because I can't do this for another 5 years, but then think of it, 30 years, right? So our brains are so intelligent. And I think if you are in survival mode for way too long, it just becomes a habit of this is just my life. This is I'm comfortable, but your brain's always pushing you to be a little bit more than comfortable. And is
Yeah.
there a like pillar in the Thrive framework that you have that feels like more people struggle with that one specifically?
You know, I would say like the thoughts is where it all starts. So when I was putting this together, like when I was thinking about birth, like our thoughts are the number one thing, right? Because like when somebody, I'll just go down the birth example. When somebody says the word childbirth, a lot of times people will react internally and not know that they're reacting. And then that's because of like the media that they're taking in or the stories that they have been told or whatever it might be. And I think really like without addressing your thoughts, like without even addressing that like, oh, this is going on behind what everything else, it's hard to even get to the next steps of the habits, the relationships. And I just think that, with knowing that there's 60,000 thoughts going on in your mind every day, that's a lot of control that could potentially be having without any of your intake at all. So I would definitely say like if there's a foundation or a pillar that kind of holds it all together, I think our thoughts are just wildly powerful. And it's something that, would definitely encourage people to get comfortable with kind of sitting in and being uncomfortable with like not picking up our phone or like, when you have a moment to just kind of be in silence, like what goes on in that brain of ours? Beautiful thing because it keeps us safe and it's always trying to have us watch out for what could be around. But when we're not distracted by something, there's a lot going on in between our ears.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I think it was Jay Shetty too. He's like, that's like prime real estate is the two
Yeah.
things between your ears. And I'm like, it's so true. Sometimes you let in music or TV or people into your ears and into your brain, and that without even knowing, that becomes a thought that you will eventually have more and more of. So yeah, thoughts make definitely a lot of sense because if you can't channel that or if you can't understand your thoughts and just know it's trying to keep you safe. I've done a few episodes too about like the glacier brain of like we still have a very, very old brain. So of course you're going to be constantly fighting with your brain. But once you realize you have an old brain, I think that can take off a lot of weight off your shoulders, knowing that it's not your brain trying to fight against you. It's just wired differently. And the people that are thriving or looking or having a happy life, it's just because they knew that and then they started changing their thoughts to not work against their brain, but try to nurture it and amend
Right.
those thoughts a little bit more. So, yeah, I love the work that you're doing there. And is there like any other kind of research that you see when you're putting the Thrive framework together of like why like humans get stuck in survival mode so often?
You know, I I think so I love the episode on the glacier brain and you even mentioned like treating it like in elderly like respect your elders and I love that. I think part of it is um we don't realize that those things like that we are putting all of these roadblocks ahead of us and we don't realize that our brain is keeping us safe. So like I was just reading something the other day and it was talking about how we're always gonna rationalize whatever decision that we have. Oh, it was a John Haidt book called Hypothesis of Happiness. And he was talking about how um you know when there was like this study where they were splitting people's brains because they were having seizures and they were wondering if we split the brain, what could happen? Would this side talk to the other side? And it was really interesting because they were saying like one hand would go to do things and the other hand would like stop it. And so what they were realizing is that we have so much going on in our brains that like when we're trying to do something, we could rationalize it. Like this side of the brain would say, oh, well, that was going to hurt me. And it was bringing like a utensil to this. So I was like pushing it away. So our brains are literally always, always, always looking out for like, how do I keep this human, this body safe? And so when I'm saying, hey, I want to go apply for this degree that is unusual for an engineer, my brain is immediately going to say, well, you can't because you'll be weird, you're going to get fired, they're going to hate you, you'll never grow in your career, you're going to be stagnant. And it just immediately puts all these roadblocks in your way. And yeah, and a lot of times we don't stop to think through each of those things. I was just talking to somebody yesterday who was, had had this full business plan that was put together and was like, the next step is I have 50 questions that I want to answer. And it was like, well, what of those things do you actually need to do, or what do you, and it was just like a roadblock that they were putting in front of them to keep them from doing that next thing. So I think that's really the part that, our lovely, lovely brain is trying to keep us safe, but we need to like listen and work with it so that we can know, oh, okay, this isn't that saber-toothed tiger. I'm not going to just immediately be let go. I'm not going to do all of these things that are like I'm making up in my brain.
And that you brought up a good point too. Even, starting my YouTube channel, I was like, but what about the lighting and what about the mic and what about, my environment? And it was like these were just little things that I like it doesn't matter if your content is good,
Mhm.
if people ask me, how do you build your Instagram page? Like it's just if your content's good, if it's relatable, people are trying to be happy. It's,
Yeah.
there more people are Googling more than ever how to be happy than how to be rich right now. And that really shows you something. And I think both of us are in this position of like, we know the knowledge. It literally lights us up. I think if we even did this interview at midnight, both of us would be like, let's go, like we're gonna do it. But it just shows that there's so many different frameworks and people, and you have such amazing people around you as well, like the coach and that was
Mhm.
asking you questions and your husband questions. I was like, let's go. Like these are people out there
Yeah.
that are trained, but also just so, I don't know, like blessed that they had the like some people can't even think of this. And so people were put on this earth to do certain jobs and certain occupations. And I truly believe that. And for you, I know that on your LinkedIn it was said like your current kind of role right now is building or bridging engineers and positive psychology to help individuals and organizations flourish. And so I want to do a fun little scenario game with you or real life application and see how your framework would go with that. So the
Let's do
current
it.
one, yeah, let's do it. Okay, so the first one is the work burnout. I think we see that across everywhere. Being in education, for you as an engineer, it's very, for me, it's more of an emotional draining job. And for you, I'm sure it's as well, but also you have to be mentally fit and intelligent for these jobs all the time. So what does thriving look like at work instead of
Mhm.
just coping? So
Yeah.
thriving at work versus coping at work.
Yeah. So, and I know I didn't get to step through the rest of the Thrive framework and I went off on a big tangent, but this is a perfect opportunity because this is exactly what I wrote about in the chapter that I got to participate in. So I was very much in survival mode. I was like, I'm going to be in this job, but it stinks and it's hard. And the thing that really snapped me into it was one night, it was New Year's Day. I was going back to work the next day. I was just like, I'm not a crier, but I was like full blown, like, oh, I don't want to go back into work tomorrow. And I was just like tears rolling down my face. And I remember that night, my husband was like, what is going on? And I just had these thoughts that were like, I hate my job. I hate the people around me. I hate going into work, like all of these things. And that was the first thing for me that snapped me out of it because I recognized those thoughts and I remembered like in the Thrive framework, it all starts right there. The biggest ticket for that too for people is to know like whenever you have a thought that is all encompassing, like I hate, right? Or I hate everybody. Um, that's typically never true, right? We're typically really being dramatic about like what's going on in our environment. So that was the first thing that was a tip for me, like, okay, my thoughts are going a little bit crazy. What's going on here? Recognizing those thoughts. The next thing is the habits, right? So, what positive psychology tells us is that we can literally rewire our brain. And Victoria, this is how I found your page because I was like very passionate about the habits is such a cool thing because whenever you think of three things that you're grateful for, like studies have shown this over and over, that you can literally rewire your brain for happiness. The analogy I always like to use for this is like imagine that you're going up to a pathway and there's two ways that you can go. And one of them is a beaten path and the other one has like bushes and shrubs and everything over the top of it. Which way are you going to go? Most likely your brain is going to take you down the path that is like well beaten, right? Because they're afraid there could be snakes, there could be something that pops out down that other path. And so our thoughts are very similar. They come up, they bubble up, and our brain will send them down this positive or this, oh, whatever beaten path it is. And so I think of when you think of gratitude, it's almost like you're putting on your boots, right? And you're like, this way might not be wired, but I'm gonna like tromp through this way. And as you're tromping down that path and as you're beating that path in, the negative one kind of like starts to grow over, right? So not only are you building that positive path, but you're also making your brain, it's more accessible for your brain to choose that path in the future. So one of the first things I incorporated coming back in was every day I forced myself to do three things I was grateful for about my job specifically. So I have a gratitude habit, but that one I was like, I need to get very specific about my job right now. So that was the first thing that I did. The next was relationships. And so when I was looking at like from my corporate job, who I was connecting with, who I was reaching out with, I started to get a bit like in that job that I was struggling with, I was not reaching out to people for help. I wasn't reaching out to mentors. And if I was being supported by people that didn't look like me, didn't have the same values as me. As a younger mom, in the engineering management field, I I've just felt really alone. So I started to be more intentional about like who I was reaching out to, who I was connecting with. And what I found was that, yeah, these people have gone through the same things and they actually felt really lonely in it as well. And so even just having that connectedness was like, okay, these are things that they've incorporated, these are things that we could go through. So you can apply it from that perspective. Um, I is instincts. And I can get super nerdy here, but like from an engineering perspective, I work on aircraft. So we have all these little systems in our aircraft that all have to like work and connect and talk to each other. And the thing that really kind of like in the new year, I was like, oh my goodness, if something isn't working in a computer, and let's say we have a display that they need to be talking, there will be an error code that pops up. And it is our jobs as engineers to address that error code ASAP, or else it could be, detrimental to the pilots or, whatever's going on. And so I was in a meeting one day and I was like, oh my gosh, we don't listen to our own instincts. We don't listen to our own error codes every single day. And so I can get into a nerdy spiral here a bit, but just at a very high level, the thing that I realized is like I would leave the office every day and my shoulders would be up to my ears. And I would have no idea how it got there. I have a 30-minute drive home and I remember like trying to pick up my kids and like, how do I get these down? And then like going through the workday and realizing that like as a meeting came up, I'm not like, taking my breaths, or as I start to like blush and as I start to like feel these error codes popping up in my own body, I wasn't addressing them. Um, the biggest thing for instincts, and I find this really fascinating because like Navy SEALs use the box breath technique. And I had always known that, like, yeah, when you go into yoga, when you go into these other areas, but like Navy SEALs legitimately use this. And if they can use a box breath, certainly I can use it in a corporate setting at a boardroom or whatever it might be. And it's something that nobody even, sees you doing. So, utilizing your breath for the instincts, the values, the Wheel of Life activity, if you're familiar with that, or if listeners aren't, you can go out there and find different Wheel of Life activities. But this is one where I was really comparing, like, okay, so where in my Wheel of Life do I feel off? And in particular, it was like with family. I was rushing in to get to meetings and then, staying late and not getting that time with family. So just really kind of evaluating where I was and how I could set better boundaries. Um, and work like environment is, I will say this is one that was one of the biggest ones for me when I applied it to my own corporate setting. Like when I came into my office, I had dead plants, I had a leaky ceiling tile, I had like papers all over my desk. And like every time I came in my office, I just put this mental checklist in my head on like, oh, I need to do that, I need to do that, I need to do that, but just push through. So environments was really clearing up the space around you so that when I come in, I'm not distracted and I don't start going down that negative spiral, but instead I can be like, oh, like breathe this fresh air. This is a nice place that I'm at. Now I can like do my mindfulness journaling. I can, write my three things of gratitude. But if not, I instead of like thinking of things I'm grateful for, I immediately start getting into this like survival mode of I hate, right? So that's a way that I applied it and helped me with overcoming that feeling of burnout. And again, um, I wouldn't say that the job that I'm in is my dream job, but it has helped me go from like survival to being like, oh, I don't mind being in the office. Like it's not a bad place to be.
You just gave an amazing checklist. I know you're giving like examples of your life, but I'm such a visual person too, and I'm an example person. So whoever is listening to this or watching this is going to be able to, maybe you can pause it and be like, okay, how are my thoughts towards my job? Okay, how are my relationships at my job? And I did that kind of as well with my mindset coach when I was in that kind of funnel of like, is this really it? Like, and I
Mhm.
think we all hit that part, and whether you listen to it or you don't, that's up to you. But I had those same thoughts as you. Like, I literally hate my job, and I really don't like all the people that I work with. And my coach said too, like, your coworkers are not supposed to be your friends. Like that is your co-working space, but you still have to respect one another. And if you have one or two good friends at work, like them, I think we all get tied up, especially being an elementary school teacher, of like you have to be friends with everyone. And then as
Yeah.
older women, we start realizing like it's bad to not want to hang out with people or not want to be in the staff room or all these different things. And then you start realizing like no, we don't have to be friends with everyone. And I think that takes a lot, especially for women, out of us of like, oh, wait, we don't have to. That's not us just being, the B word. But it's like, no, knowing our
Yeah.
energy, knowing our space. And sometimes, especially being in a corporate job, I'm sure that dynamic's a little bit different because I deal with children all day, but you're dealing with adults all day. Like that's also a
Mm.
different dynamic. And I'm sure that's just as like, you want to shake some people as well, but understanding like, okay, yes, I'm allowed to have these thoughts, but how can I work that and make it the spot that I want to work in, not making everyone else happy? Definitely can clean some of those tensions in our brain that we're like, like you said, I just hate this place. I hate my work and I hate the people. Like, I think we all deal with that. And so I hope if you're listening, take the time to really go through the steps and be like, okay, what do I have to change in my work to get out of just the coping and checklist? So that was great, Karli. Thank you. And
Awesome. Yeah.
the next little scenario that I want to give you is what about like relationships? Like how thriving affects like connection and could resolve conflict and even like emotional energy. Would you say like there's some people that yeah, is there I'm trying to reword my question, but is there a real life application of like, yeah, the Thrive framework would work maybe in a marriage or like you said when your capstone was about, women that were delivering or giving birth. Does that kind of heal you as well of having those conversations and having those connections?
Yeah, I think and if I'm understanding right, so from a relationships perspective, you're saying like how can you almost apply the Thrive framework to relationships?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, one area I'm really passionate about, and I feel very fortunate because my husband and I are like really good communicators and we work together really well. But I've seen this in my own friends. I've seen this in just others having conversations that like a lot of times in relationships we can get stuck um in a downward spiral, right? Like when you think of marriages or you think of relationships, like, oh, this person is not 100% perfect. And so I'm going to pick out the things that I think are negative about them. Um, like I'll just go down this husband example and he's going to be like, oh my gosh, Karli. But like if you have like a marriage or a relationship or a solid person, let's just go with that. And your thoughts are continually like, they didn't do this. They don't care about what I'm doing. They're not, going down to make sure he's checking everything off the list. Then you're going to continue to go into that downward spiral, and it's going to be really, really hard to kind of pull yourself up from that and go down into like, well, what could be? And so, like the habits, the gratitude, practicing gratitude, I try to do that all the time with my husband specifically, because not only does it build your brain up around like what they're doing, but also it helps build them up too. Like with children, love to do that as well. I think the other thing, and maybe what you're kind of getting to is like, what about challenging relationships? Is that,
Yeah, that's a big one.
yeah, so challenging relationships. It's really interesting because w one of the reasons why I was struggling so much in my career at that time is because I was working with a really, really challenging individual. And so, thoughts, yes, they were happening, but there was part of me that was like, I kind of mean it. And when I when I have these thoughts, habits, I'm like, what are some good things? I'm struggling to see it. I actually worked with a therapist who was just I was working with her regularly and I was bringing this up. And she gave me one of the greatest gifts that I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a good technique. I want to share it with everybody. And she recommended a bingo card. She was like, look, for people that you're never going to change, like, what about a bingo card? And I'm like, what does this even mean? And so she shared that, like, write down all the things that annoy you and fill up a bingo card. And I'm like, I definitely could do that. And so, and whenever they did something, like for example, at 5 p.m., he would be like, I need this complex data by close of business. And I'm like, bro, I'm already on my way home. And no, like I have 3 kids screaming in my face now. You're not getting this complex data. But like instead of being super upset about it, I started to get like geeked out and excited, like, oh my gosh, he just did a bingo card, and if I get one more, I'm gonna win. And it was crazy to me, like how that flipped, because I was like, there's nothing in the world that's gonna help me. So that was kind of like I included that in the environment section as if you can't change that relationship, if you can't change your thoughts, if you can't change that, like this is a tool that has worked for me to help kind of overcome some of those more challenging relationships. I did get bingo. It was a lot of fun. You like celebrate in your own mind. It's a fun little game.
Yeah, the bingo card. That's amazing. I think that's so fun too. Like I can't change them, but might as well like laugh at it. And like, laughing has so many different effects on our brain as well. So I
Yep.
think I'm gonna do that. Thanks, Carly. And I know we went over a few, science-backed practices, like you said, the gratitude journaling and the checklist of just going through the Thrive framework of like, where am I kind of struggling? And then you just brought up the bingo card. Are there any other practices that you use or coach to people that are like surviving or struggling to get them thriving again so that people can take away after watching this video?
For sure. So, and I love to share the science behind it too. So, mindful or the gratitude we already kind of talked about. You're literally putting on boots and like stomping a new path. The other thing I love to do in keynotes is I always do go through like a visualization practice, and we go through like a future successful you visualization. Typically, this is in the value section, and the reason I love this is because we don't always know like what that looks like. And the funny thing about this is the first time I went through a future successful me, well, the first time I went through a future visualization, I didn't hear the like future successful part. And so the future visualization for me was very much like I am in survival mode, like messy bun. I looked like Adam Sandler rolling up into like some award show with my baggy sweatpants, big hoodie. And then when they were like, oh no, this is the future successful you, I was like, oh, I have some work to do. I love to do that with people because you get to kind of picture like, well, what would my ideal life look like? And what's really cool is a lot of times there's things in your ideal life that are accessible to you today that you just are, putting these roadblocks in your mind. So an example of this is, actually today, like I would love to go talk to Victoria, but I'm working corporate and I have a full-time job and I have 3 kids. And like, when am I ever going to have time to do all these things I want to do? And one of the things I visualized is like a slow morning with a cup of coffee and going for a long walk. And I always tell myself like these things aren't accessible. And, through conversations, it's like, oh, I can take a PTO day and go do that and have that. Um, and yeah, there's many examples that you can go through, but a lot of the times you'll see that like the things that you want or that you're striving for are accessible to you today. So what can you pull in from that visualization? Whether it be like what clothes you're wearing, if you're comfortable, if you what you have around you. to help make you more in a thriving place versus a surviving. So love that tool. And then affirmations kind of go down the same route as gratitude in that when you are affirming something or when you are, saying I am courageous, your brain is going to look for ways to support that fact because we are such rational people that you're gonna try to go find those things, right? So, affirmations and I guess in that same vein, manifestations, right? So, these are the things that I'm trying to manifest. I'm really big on goal setting. And so at the beginning of each year, putting down things that I want to do and actually writing them out on paper. And yeah, just the science behind that is that when you do that, you're more likely to because you're going to be looking for those opportunities to engage in whatever you've written down.
Yeah, and especially with, well, depending when you're listening to this video, but for us, it's, December 5th. And so the new year is starting. And so this is like an exciting time for people to write down those goals or look at the Thrive framework and be like, okay, what is a goal for each one this coming year? So I think that's how like little bite-sized goals are so important because then your brain gets used to it. And with all the clients that you've had and your keynote speaking and all of that, what is like, would you say like the biggest surprise people have when they start thriving again? Is there any like aha moments or anything you've heard where people like, damn, like I've made it or I'm making it?
I think the biggest aha moment that a lot of people have is like, oh, I can do this. Like, oh, it can be done. My life can be like blooming with flowers. And that like most of that is accessible in your day to day. Um, we tend to give ourselves a lot of excuses of like, I don't have time. I don't have the ability. I don't have the finances or whatever it might be. But whatever you want, like it's there, it's rumbling. And so like the fact that it is accessible, you just have to be open to receiving it. And I think that's been the biggest aha for me. I think the other thing, like the keynote specifically thing that I found really eye-opening is that these seem to me sometimes like, oh, these are really simple things that maybe I just didn't know, right? Or maybe I just was like, oh, that kind of sounds woo-woo or whatever. But like these are very simple, simple things. This is not like you're gonna add, I need you to go to the gym for an hour and I need you to go do this. This is like I can think of three things I'm grateful for within 30 seconds and I can do that three times a day and that hardly takes up 10 minutes, right? So there's all these things that are such little changes that can make such large impacts, and that's been the thing that I've loved to see because people will reach back out and be like, hey, 2 months ago you came to talk to us and I've been thinking about that and that has really changed the way that I approach each day. And to me, I love it. Like if we can create that ripple effect, if we can create the opportunity where oh sorry, if we can create that opportunity where people are going to start thriving in their day instead of just getting by, like we are all going to be happier, we are all going to be healthier, and we're going to support each other in that. So that's the thing that I'm so excited about. That's why I love, love, love what you're doing. I love how you're doing this YouTube channel to make things more accessible for everybody, and just so excited to see what magic comes out of it.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. And also just like that knowing and understanding too that I talk about it all the time. It's that like happiness and thriving, and you can agree with me or not, but it's like a daily thing that you have to do. Like you're not gonna
Yes.
like it takes 30 days to be happy. Sure, it takes 30 days to rewire your brain and make a new habit, but once those 30 days are over, you still have to continue. It's not like, oh, I made it on the next level of the video game and I'll never go back down to
Yep.
level one. It's like, no, like every time you turn on your video game or every time you turn on your TV, think of that as your brain is like, okay, turn on my brain today. Okay, I have to get back to that level. And
Yep.
yes, sure, it might be like scary of like I have to do that every day. Like, is it worth it? And it is because it gets easier and easier. And for you as well, I'm sure there's some people that start slipping back into survival mode, but it's just
Mhm.
understanding that, right?
Yeah, and Victoria, you bring up a good point too. So when we talk about happiness, people think like positive psychology and happiness is just like we are bebopping around our day and everything is sunshine and rainbows and like everything is good. No,
Yeah.
that's not the thing. Like life comes with challenges. And so if you can continue to do those practices, I think it's BJ Fogg that says like the easier a habit is to do, the more likely you'll do it. So like if you are mindful about like waking up and before I grab my phone, I'm going to think of three things that I'm grateful for. If you continue to do those easy, small little habits, then when the hard stuff happens, it's going to be easier for you to access, reach out and access those tools versus if the hard thing happens and you don't have those tools, it's going to be a really, really hard day, right? So that's where it's like, yeah, positive psychology, happiness is not like every day you're at, level 100. It is like every day I'm going to work to do the best that I can so that, I'm enjoying the day. I also could geek out on the fact that like we are on a planet that we are all alive, and the fact that we have life on this planet is crazy. The fact that we're here is crazy. When you look at, everything else going on in our universe, and it's like, man, you have this one precious life. Like, let's have a blast. Let's have a ball while we're doing it. So, as much as we can share that with others, I think it's just incredible.
Yeah, we're just a spinning rock, right? And so being able to speak with you and share this with people that are going to watch us, I think it's a beautiful spot. And learning from other people is so important, especially because some people and some human beings are brought into certain families, into different situations, different traumas, different potentials, and different opportunities and different fears. Like we all start at a different level and just it takes a few years to figure that out. But
Yeah.
once you kind of have that gut feeling or when you're like, okay, I'm ready to move forward or move past this, really trust it. And before we close off, I feel like I could keep talking with you, but I'll let you go soon. But where can people follow you? I know that your book is out as well, Beyond the Pipeline. And so, yeah, just where can people follow you on Instagram or LinkedIn? So if they like this talk, they can be like, I want to go follow Karli.
Yeah, of course. So I have an Instagram, it's called Life and Labor. N is the letter N, so life, letter N, labor. Also have a website, lifeandlabor.com. On that, there's different resources. There's the positive childbirth class, the keynote conversations, and more things. And yeah, I'll continue to work to build that out, as I'm not putting roadblocks ahead of my own mind.
And if you could leave with one little encouragement for people or a little hope message who are feeling stuck, what would you give to those people?
I would first give them a really big hug if they were open to that. And I would just say, I know that there's a voice that's like inside of them rumbling, and I would encourage them to listen to that. I think we all have that voice that's telling us, potentially what direction we want to go. And I think that they know. And I would just give them the grace and the space to listen to that. Because there is thriving, there is happiness, and I know that you and I both wish that so much for them. And there's many people wishing that as well.
Absolutely. Well, Karli, thank you again for coming on Her Happy Mind,
Yeah.
and I hope to speak with you soon.
Awesome. This is so cool. Thank you so much, Victoria. Really appreciate it.